What do you want? Oh, there it goes, leaving all the footprints in the bunker. Oh, it's drinking water. As the oldest golf course out here in Kuala Lumpur, I felt like the old course at Royal Selangor deserved a full course vlog, so today we're going to go through the entire 18 holes. We're starting out on the back 9, this is the 10th hole, and the 10th hole still has a perfect view of the Petronas Twin Towers at the background. Over the years, development has slowly prevented us from being able to have a clear view of them. I remember back in the days, you could still see both towers. Now we can see about one and a half of them. Hopefully in the years to come, we still are able to see the Petronas Twin Towers from this hole. If not, this is me documenting it right here. So let's get started on this course vlog. Getting on the fairway makes this hole pretty straightforward, although the green here is pretty tricky, so definitely want to give yourself as short of a club into this hole as you can. If the pin position is behind, you definitely don't want to go all the way for the pin because it is pretty detrimental. If you go over this green, it'll be a very difficult up and down. First hole of the day, just going for the center of the green. The one thing that I find that is sneaky about RSJC is definitely the greens. If you are not familiar with the golf course and the greens and the contours, this would make it difficult for you to know which part of the green to hit. And if you don't hit greens out here, it can be a little bit tricky with the chipping. Most of the time, if you give yourself putts on the green, you'll find your experience here to be a lot more pleasant. But like I said, if you're not familiar with the golf course and you don't know where to hit it on those greens, it can really be a sneakily challenging golf course. From my experience, when you play this old course, I find it very interesting because I do feel like the front 9 and back 9 are a little bit separated in a sense. They have different vibes to them if you would. Funnily enough, out of the 4 nines that are out here at Royal Selangor, I would say that this is probably one of the most difficult 9s. It may seem harmless, but one of the reasons why is I think because there aren't many birdie opportunities out here. So when there is a birdie opportunity, if you do not take that birdie opportunity, there are many bogeys waiting for you out there. So you definitely want to play a little bit smarter out here and put yourself in good position so that you give yourself some opportunity to have good looks at the hole. But just know that it's not going to be an easy 9. You're not going to go out there and make 5 and 6 birdies. So just be patient, and I think patience is very important around this golf course. So hole 11 here is a par 5. For the second shot, I'm not going for the green in 2. I can't get there. There are a lot of bunkers guiding both the left and the right side of this fairway, so you definitely want to stay out of that. Whenever I come up to this hole for my second shot, I'm just going to hit something that's comfortable to me. Today I felt pretty confident with my forward, so I decided to go with a forward here. So hitting something longer for my second shot, just now I left myself with a pretty short wedge here. So that's another reason why I said to just hit something that's comfortable to you, because this hole isn't very long. So I knew that either way I'd be having some kind of wedge into this green. The ball position today is a little bit below my feet. It's always a little bit tricky when it comes to wedges because being able to predict how much a slope is going to affect the shot, especially with wedges, is always a little bit tricky in my opinion. The slope definitely did not take my ball there, so I ended up being left off the pin. It's all good though, we're still on the green putting for birdie. This entire green slopes from the back of the green to the front of the green. So every time you're putting upwards, it's always a lot slower. And every time you're putting, for instance, on a side hill, it breaks a lot more towards the front than it seems. I felt like I was already taking a lot of break for this putt. So we're moving on to the next hole. The previous hole was definitely one of the birdie holes that I was talking about, but again, all you can really do is get yourself in good positions to potentially make a birdie. We're not going to dwell on the fact that we didn't make a birdie. All we can do is move on to the next hole. But this hole is definitely a par hole. For the tee shot, you pretty much want to just go more towards the right side of this fairway because of those bunkers down the left. You do not want to get in those because we have an elevated green and it's a pretty long hole, so we're going to have a pretty long club into this green. So we managed to get it down the fairway. It's kind of a weird fairway where the further left you hit, the chances are you're going to hit the slope and you're going to have a shorter approach shot into this green. Today I did not hit that slope as you can see, so I've got a pretty far approach into this green. My stance is also a little bit on an uphill, so I know that ball is going to go pretty high, so I was aiming for pretty much a drop and stop kind of situation, playing it all the way carry. This is again another hole though that you definitely do not want to go over the green. If you're not too confident, I would aim more towards the IKEA sign and just get it somewhere in the front of the green. That's going to give you a much easier chip than if you were to go over, especially because like I said, this is a long hole, so you're going to have a long club into this green. My ball released a bit more than I was expecting to, probably because of the draw that I played, so I am a bit past the pin but definitely not in any danger here. You can see from this view that this green is definitely fat but pretty shallow. So like I said, if you were not confident, the play was definitely to go to the front right. Even being short right, you're way better than being over and leaving yourself with a very difficult chip. This is a hole where I feel like anybody would be happy walking away with a par, and again, a birdie is a bonus. So next up we have hole 13. It's another pretty difficult par 4 in terms of being able to score on it because the green is pretty tricky. The tee shot is pretty self-explanatory. There is a lot more space down the left side. The only problem is a lot of people look at this as a dogleg right and get a little bit greedy and try to cut the corner. Because the approach shot is tricky, I would recommend choosing somewhere out towards the left side so that you can ensure that you're on the fairway. Just get yourself on the fairway and we can navigate the approach shot from there. So now that we're on the fairway, we can see that we've got a little bit of a longer club into this green. For this hole, I always find that I'm a little bit in between distance, and that's why I think it plays a little bit trickier for me. The green here does not tend to release much, so I do feel like you can be quite aggressive with this green. What makes it more tricky is that it's a turtleback style green, so it pretty much slopes off from every single direction, and there are bunkers cornering the left and the right side, so being able to control your ball directionally is very important here if you want to give yourself a chance at hitting the green. The only benefit, like I said, is even though I'm hitting a long club in, I do find that it bites pretty well, so you are able to be a bit more aggressive with it. Today I hit a good shot with my 5-iron, so I was able to give myself a very good look at birdie. Again, this is another hole where I'm happy to walk away with par, so I'm always happy to get birdie opportunities in these holes.
Nice putt.
So we're now on hole 14, which is a par 3, and up to this hole I think you can kind of tell why I said this 9 is pretty difficult. So out of the first 6 holes on the back 9, I think the first and the second hole is probably the most approachable. The next 4 holes I think you'll be happy to walk away with par. This par 3, again hitting a 5-iron. It's not a super difficult approach shot because the green is pretty fat. However, this green is still a little bit shallow, so I do think that distance control here is very important. Being over this green is not the play for sure. Again, always find that I'm a little bit in between distance for this hole, which makes it a bit tricky for me. So I felt like I was a little bit over clubbed there and I tried to baby it too much, ended up pushing it. I somehow ended up on this side hill lie, definitely not the place to be. There is a huge slope on the green. Basically where I'm standing is about how far I need to carry it and how much break I'm potentially going to need to give myself the best chance at a par. Even though you couldn't see my ball land in the previous shot, I think you can see how much it kicked left. Not too upset though, this is probably the best outcome given the lie that I had, and I still have a putt here for par.
Nice putt.
So managed to save the par in that hole. Like I said, pars are our friends here. Let's move on to hole 15, which is a pretty difficult par 5. Starting off from the tee shot here, the best aim is probably towards the right side of that condominium building out in the distance. We want to give ourselves a good tee shot and a good position because the second shot is not going to be an easy one with water playing down the entire left side. This second shot is very tricky because there's water surrounding the entire left side, and the further you go, the further in the water comes, so the fairway becomes narrower. There are a bunch of bunkers lining the right side. The best play is usually just to fly that first bunker because that's the widest fairway that you can find up there. It's going to give you a little bit of a longer approach shot into the green, especially since it's elevated, but it gives you the best chance of being on the fairway and taking the water out of play, so that's usually my play for this hole. Because the fairway was wet where I was for my approach shot, I tried to pick it too clean and ended up thinning it. Again, this is a bit of a shallow green, which makes this hole even more difficult. Anything short is going to come back into this bunker, and anything over kicks over into a big down slope. Again, another signature RSGC turtleback green. So we've reached hole 16, which is definitely a more distance-friendly hole, however definitely has its own challenges as well. The left side, water hazard, and the further up you go, the more the water hazard comes in and the ball does tend to kick left up there, so you don't necessarily have to hit a driver here. Like I said, not a super long hole, so just get yourself on the fairway on this one. For this approach shot, this green, depending on where the pin position is, can definitely be quite tricky as well, even though you're hitting a short club into this green. Usually towards the back of the green, it's pretty difficult to hold the shot because it does tend to kick away. For this green, everything slopes from the front to the back, but if you hit it too short, there is a chance that it's going to spin up. So even though it's a short hole, depending on the pin position, it still can be quite tricky to get it close to the hole. So like I said, if you want to play well on this 9, you definitely have to capitalize on the birdie holes, and that's not what I've been doing on this 9 clearly, because when I've given myself some birdie opportunities, I was not able to convert it. Again, another tricky part about RSGC is gotta be the grain on the putting greens. You have to get used to it. The first time that I came and played out here, I really struggled with my putting. Today, I felt like I was hitting good putts, it was just not really going in the hole, and it was a little bit of misreads, and we all have those days. However, if it's your first time out here and if you struggle with grain, you're definitely going to have to need some time to get used to the putting greens. So don't be too disheartened if you come out here and you have a tough day on the putting greens, because guess what? We all have those sometimes. So we've reached the final hole of this 9, which is a very long par 4. It's playing 421 yards. Again, don't forget in Asia it is full carry, so that's 421 yards carry distance. For the tee shot, you definitely want to avoid the left side. Being in those bunkers there means that you're gonna have to lay up because they're very high lipped, and there's a lot more space out the right side than it seems. So don't be too greedy and just get yourself on the ferry for the tee shot so that you even have a chance to go for the screen. After hitting a good tee shot and with the pin being in front today, I still have a 5 hybrid into this green. The pin being in front is probably one of the most difficult pin positions on this hole because there's bunkers on the left side, and if you hit anything down the right side, it does tend to kick right. Again, another classic RSGC turtleback green. So accuracy is important here, however we're hitting a long club into this green, so my focus here is always just to try and hit a good shot and give myself the best chance at making a par.
Watch this. Shot. Shot.
With our front 9 done, now we're moving on to our back 9, which is the front 9 of this golf course. A long starting hole to get us started. A good tee shot is required here in order to set you up for the approach shot. The fairway slopes a little bit both ways, so if you hit it down the left side, it tends to kick left, and if you hit it down the right side, it tends to kick right, with the driving range and an out of bounds out on the right side. Not an easy tee shot, so it always helps me to pick something out in the distance as my target, so that I can focus on that rather than all the distraction on this tee shot. This hole has a very tricky green because of the shape of the green. It's a pretty long green, but it does have many slopes on it that kicks the ball away from the hole most of the time. So being able to get it close to the green if you're not hitting some kind of mid to short iron is definitely pretty difficult in my opinion. For this hole, I would definitely favor hitting it short rather than over, so if you're not very confident in being able to stop the ball because you have a long club in, I would recommend hitting the shorter club and just giving yourself an uphill chip for the next shot. Missing my approach shot a little bit, I left myself just short of the green. I think you can tell from this angle what I meant by a long green but many slopes. So even from here you can see that if I had landed a hybrid on the green, there is a chance that it's going to go over because I have to land it pretty far just to get it on the green. And it's a much more difficult chip from the back of the green, so that's why I recommend leaving anything short if you're in between clubs or not super confident, especially if you're not super good with flop shots because that's what's going to be required if you were to hit it over the green. The tricky greens here definitely play a big factor in how difficult it is to score out here. Not only am I hitting longer clubs into the green, but because of all the grain and the undulation around the greens, even if you were to hit good shots, having a good day on the putting green is really going to make or break your score out here. So let's move on to the next hole, which is a par 4 again. Bunkers down the left side, but I'm able to carry those, and there is a bunker further out on the right side, but because I'm able to carry the bunkers on the left side, I usually just aim it somewhere towards the right side of those left bunkers. Again, a pretty similar distance hole to the first hole, so you do want to hit a decently good drive here to give yourself as short of a club into the green as possible.
Bams.
So on this hole for the approach shot with the bunkers guarding the left side, the tendency to miss here is definitely down the right side. The best miss if you're going to give yourself an easier chip is probably going to be short right. Anything further right, which is going to be green height, it's going to be a little bit more of a difficult chip, especially if the pin is located where it is today, which is back right, because there is quite a bit of a slope there, so just be a bit aware of that. If the pin is located like where it is today, which is back right, and you're not too confident with your shot, I would recommend hitting it short right to give yourself the easiest chip. I did miss it down the right side and pushed it a little bit, but my distance was correct, so I am still pin high, which did not leave me with the most difficult chip. The thing that's hard to chip from the right side here is it's hard to gauge how much the ball is going to run out because it does look like it's all sloping away from us, and depending on your angle, you could have a big breaker where you're going to have to aim pretty far right because most of the green from this angle slopes right to left. Moving on to a pretty interesting par 5. For this hole, it is a bit of a dogleg right, however, you definitely don't want to be too greedy. From this tee box, the best angle is probably just right off the apartment building out there. After the tee shot, you have a variety of options of what you want to do on this hole. Most people, I feel like, generally lay up because it is still pretty far to the green from here. The safe side is obviously towards the left side of this fairway. I think I got a bit greedy here today. I wanted to be as close as possible and decided to go with a 7 wood. Normally, I would just hit something like a 6 iron and give myself about 100 yard into the green. Clearly not the best setup there, did not leave myself in a good position after that, made this hole a lot more complicated, but I was lucky enough to stay dry, so we still have an approach shot into this green. The ball here is way under my feet, so you would expect it to go right. It is hard to predict how much the slope is going to affect this shot. However, with the water being down the right side, we do want to play it down the safer side, which is towards the left side of this green, and not be too cute after just being lucky to stay dry. Moving on to the next hole, which is a par 3. I think the key to this hole is to make sure that you're always shooting it to the center of the green. I think especially when the pin is located in front, there's really no point in trying to go for the pin unless you've got a perfect club and you're feeling super confident over it. If not, the tendency here is definitely to pull it long left because you're trying to swing away from the water. So just choose something that's right in the center target and center distance, and you will always give yourself a look at birdie. Onwards we go as I'm still looking for my birdies. On this hole, the main priority is to make sure that you stay clear of those bunkers down the right side because it is very difficult to approach the green from those bunkers. Because of that, and because it's not a very long hole, you can pretty much hit any club you want and still have a decent look at this green.
Fairway, very short.
So I'm not sure if you guys could tell what happened there. I was hitting a cut and my ball actually clipped that tree and fell straight down, so I just made this hole a lot longer. I think that drive went no further than 150 yards, so you definitely do not need to make this hole that difficult. Like I said, you can really hit anything off the tee and still give yourself a decent look at this green. However, this is what I'm stuck with today, so we're gonna give it our best to try and still get this on the green. On this green, everything slopes from the front to the back of the green, so hitting a hybrid into this green just now, I was really just trying to get it to the front of the green. That's why I was hitting a cut so that it would land softer. Like I said, this is usually a pretty easy hole, so I made it a lot more difficult for myself today, but I'm just happy to have hit the green and still given myself a putt for birdie on this hole. The next hole is a par 5, and the one thing I enjoy about the first 9 of the old course is definitely the par 5s. I find them to be challenging, but at the same time they're very reasonable. If you hit good shots, you can be rewarded, and you might even have the opportunity to go for the green in 2. So I find these to be very good and challenging par 5s where you're not guaranteed a birdie, but if you hit good shots, you can definitely be rewarded. After hitting the fairway, the second shot is where you really have to make the decision. The safe play here is going to be to lay up short of the water hazard. Those bunkers up there are definitely very strategically placed. They're placed there to catch people who are trying to go for the green in 2. And they're not very friendly bunkers because if you get in them, chances are you're going to have one of those awkwardly in between long bunker shots. So usually in most situations I do tend to lay up on this hole, but today I just felt like giving my forward a little practice shot, so I decided to go for this green in 2. So like I said, this is probably the one place that you don't want to be in, 40-yard bunker shot. So I'm using my 54-degree wedge here, trying to neutralize the face a little bit more. I still do have to get over the slip, and I don't have much room to work with because the pin is in front today, so I'm really just trying to get this on the green.
What a shot. Wow. That was pretty good.
Even though I was not in an ideal position there, going for the green in 2 meant that I still left myself with some kind of wedge into this green. If you have a reliable enough short game, there are many instances where it's much better to just leave yourself with some kind of chip rather than a full shot into the green. Like I said, that depends on your feel around the greens. I personally still feel like I'd rather be 30 yards from the green than 100 yards from the green. In some situations, going for the green in 2 might not necessarily leave you in the best position, but if the benefit of you pulling it off can outweigh the negative of you not pulling it off, I would still say go for it because you might still give yourself a much easier birdie opportunity than if you were 100 yards away, for instance.
Up and down.
So we've reached the last 3 holes, and right now we've got an elevated green par 3. For this par 3, if you hit this green, it's a pretty straightforward hole. It is a bit of a turtleback, but it definitely slopes more on the right side, so you do want to favor the left side of this green. If anything, I would say that you would at least want to aim towards the left side of the building out in the distance. Anything towards that right side of that building is definitely going to kick down that big slope, and it's going to leave you with about at least a 30-yard chip. So definitely favor the left side of this green. You'll make this hole a lot more straightforward.
Oh, get in. Yeah.
Nice little birdies to get us back to even par, which is definitely at least where you want to be around this area. The last 2 holes are not too easy to birdie. For this tee shot, you want to favor the right side. There's a lot more space out there and you don't want to leave yourself blocked by those trees on the left side. But other than that, it's a pretty straightforward tee shot.
Yeah.
Once you hit the fairway, the trick here is the green. If you hit it anywhere past the center of the green, it does tend to kick over. I think everything just kind of slopes kind of from the front to the back. However, it's kind of weird because when you look at it and you're putting from the front of the green, it does look like you're putting uphill and into the green. So it's a pretty interesting hole. I feel like this is just maybe a little bit of a harder green, so it tends to not catch a ball and not spin, especially when you're hitting a longer club or you're coming in from the rough. I do feel like if you're going to miss it, missing it short is going to be an easier chip than over though. Finally, we're ending the round and it's probably with the most challenging hole out here. This hole is a pretty severe dogleg left. If you hit it down the right side though, it does tend to kick away into the cow grass rough, which is not an ideal spot to be in, especially because you're going to hit a pretty long club into the screen, and you definitely want to avoid those bunkers down the left side because they're not the easiest as well. If you hit it on the left side, you will likely have to hit a draw around those trees from the bunker, so getting yourself on the fairway here is definitely a bonus. For me, I usually aim it somewhere in between those two trees right out in the center, just picking one of them based on how I'm hitting that day and just swinging it at the target and hopefully getting myself in a good position for my approach shot.
Okay, yeah. Bend it a bit. Yeah.
I was a little bit too close to the bunkers for my comfort, however that made the hole a little bit shorter for me. With the pin position being in front today, I was just trying to land this at the front of the green because if you get it past the center, it slopes away so you do tend to get a further putt. However, par on this hole is always a good score. Like I said, it's not an easy hole, so just hitting the green here is my main priority. After successfully hitting the green, I'm giving myself a look at birdie here, which is really all I can ask for on this hole. So this comes to the end of our vlog. I hope that you guys have enjoyed watching me play the entire old course here out here at Royal Selangor. Let me know which one was your favorite hole, and if you would include this course in your bucket list if you were to come down to KL. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel for more Golf with Jen. Thanks for watching and catch you guys next time.